rates don't rise and all the connections work. He sometimes ticks some of you off, which I kind of enjoy, and he does it so naturally. It's Steve Laffey, SteveLaffey.com. How are you, sir?
Jimmy, great show. Good to be with you, as always, on a very cold day, but we don't care.
It is cold. It is cold. But, yesterday was so dreary. I was telling everybody earlier, it was so dreary here in Colorado. And we usually are pretty sunny here, but today, looking out, it's much better. I like it. So I like the sunshine. Steve Laffey, we're drinking from a fire hydrant. There's so much news and information that's out there. It's just crazy. What's the one news story this week that's really caught your attention? Because sometimes we're all reading the headlines on page 1, and sometimes you're on the Wall Street Journal page 23J, and you see something that says this should be the top story, not the bottom story. Is there one of those out there that's kind of caught your attention that isn't about Elon Musk and Donald Trump and Doge?
That's funny to say. Well, I mean, there is so many, and I've got all these papers around now that you ask me, like, what is the thing that I really, was going to talk about? Well, it really does go back to, I mean, you were just talking about something extraordinarily important. And to give Donald Trump credit, he's here to clean up a mess, lots of messes. There's so many messes, it's not even funny. The one that has to do with Ukraine and Europe, I agreed with Trump in 2015 when he said it, in 2016 and 2017. He didn't do much about it, but he got NATO to put more money in. Just so people know, America supplies at least 75% of the money to NATO, even though we're one country, we're the biggest country, et cetera, et cetera. There's 30 some odd people. So if you back up even farther, it was George Bush who sat at the Olympics with Vladimir Putin, and Putin invaded Georgia, the country of Georgia, not the state for some of the people under 30 who won't even know what we're talking about, the country of Georgia, right? And that started this whole thing of Putin pushing back. There were other things that he did. Under Obama, there was no penalty paid for on a hot mic for Obama to tell the president of Russia, not Putin, hey, when I get reelected, I have a lot more leniency, a lot more be able to move around and maneuver. No one penalized Obama because people, the media, loved Obama. When Trump came in, they had already taken Crimea. So here he is. They didn't do much. Now, Putin plays a long game. China plays a long game. They can hang out for years and years. We in America can't. We have 2-year elections for House of Representatives, right? So fast forward, he did some things with NATO, but he really didn't do enough. He ran up giant deficits, which were bad. He didn't do anything about the deficit, et cetera, et cetera. And then what happened was he lost the election because the PPP program, and he didn't do much about, the trade stuff. Now he's back, right? So let's go fast forward. So now you didn't say it the way I would exactly say it. Biden could have easily won the war with the coalition of the willing. He could have stopped the war, as I said the day before the invasion, by ordering attacking Belarus with NATO or green people or people who just would lent some planes. The war would have not have started. But for Trump to say yesterday that Ukraine started the war is simply wrong, and he's going about it in the wrong way. If I were him, he would get much more traction by bringing in NATO and saying, listen, we're effectively not doing this anymore. I made a mistake in my first 4 years. He'll never say I made a mistake. But saying that, listen, only Poland was listening. Only Estonia was actually listening. They're at 3% of GDP. I have a plan that you're going to go to 5% over 5 years in defense, and we're going to supply a lot of it to you. It's not transactional, but we have the military to do so. And therefore, we're actually not going to have these problems anymore. But he's not doing that. In other words, the haphazard way of going about it, and yesterday saying, and I have the quote, we could read it. I said it to you. I wrote it all down. For Trump to say something like, quote, I think I have the power to end this war, and I think it's going well. First of all, it's not going well. But today I heard, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there 3 years. He's referring to Ukraine. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never have started it. You could have made a deal. He could have thrown it back on Biden. Really, Biden could have made a deal, right? Ukraine is really powerless, except for the fact that they're tough as nails, have invented a new way to fight, have developed drone fighting that everybody's looking at, really important stuff that's going to be going on for years and years in the world. He could have thrown it back on Biden. He threw it at Zelensky, and the reason is, again, back to this one point. He suffers from narcissism. So Zelensky wasn't bowing down about what was happening with Russia. So now he's after Zelensky. The only good point is that he'll just keep changing his mind, you know? But Ukraine and now people in the UK, so for example, the UK can't really fight a war. They used to be the world superpower. They have 80,000 troops. But NATO by itself, without the US, has 1.5 million troops, more than Russia. So NATO today, if I was running NATO, would be like, fine, Mr. President, why don't you just tell us you're not funding anymore? You don't have to come in and say we're taking your rare earth minerals, which, Jimmy, nobody's going to get to the rare earth minerals for, I don't know, 50 years. They're close to Russia. They're not like in the middle of Kiev. The thing is preposterous. And then it gets to the preposterous nature of the new U.S. Secretary of Treasury, who's actually goes to Ukraine, who's actually engaging. He's going to have a big enough problem rolling $17 trillion of debt. He shouldn't be involved in any of this stuff. And he has a quote where he's calling what Trump is doing masterful, right? I wrote it all down. An elegant plan regarding Ukraine. That they're going to have a long-term partnership that's the opposite of China, that goes in and does things with countries. This is so off the rails to help America that I don't even know how to function and talk about it in a way. This is not productive for America's national interest. It would be productive to say, listen, I'm not going to say this myself. We're leaving NATO in 5 years. Here's the transition you need. You could do that, right? I mean, by themselves, the Finns and the Swedes can close the Baltic. They're tough. They joined NATO. By themselves, the other people could actually, with Poland's help, go right through to the Sea of Azov, right to the lake they need to cut off Russia. They could take out the bridge that connects Russia to Ukraine. They could do that today. Russia's not going to do anything. Russia, like in many ways, like Iran, are back on their heels. They've used over 50% of their tanks, and the ones that are left, Jimmy, are ones that were built in 1947.
The old ones.
So we can win and defeat Russia, but that would be a better plan. But Trump's plan isn't really a plan. It's a back and forth, back and forth. You know, for example, 25% import tariffs now are coming. They're probably not coming on Porsche cars, on pharmaceuticals, on stuff that he just makes up, right? From Europe. I don't know. How is that helpful? Because it's changed 4 times since we've talked. That's not helpful for American companies.
If you're just listening to the audio portion, that's Steve Laffey, his website, SteveLaffey.com. Steve, I want to ask you the question of the day, which is presidential libraries. You sent me one about the JFK Library reopened, suddenly closed, now it's reopened, and we'll talk about that. But libraries you've been to, but I want to see if you saw this, since I tried to play this audio yesterday. This is the chairman of the Munich conference last week, is a German, and I'll play a snippet of him. I think the sound will work. It didn't work yesterday.
President Vance on Friday, we have to fear that our common value base is not that common anymore. I'm very grateful to all those European politicians that spoke out and reaffirmed the values and principles that they are defending. No one did this better than President Zelensky. Let me conclude, and this becomes difficult.
He starts to cry.
I didn't see that. Go, keep going. Okay, that's it.
Because he's crying. And he was crying, Steve. I don't know if you heard
No, I didn't.
J.D. Vance.
I did hit J.D. Vance.
He was crying because J.D. Vance said, "Hey, you have censorship, and we've been a part of it too. And we need to have free speech, and you should have free speech." And he even said, "Hey, we had examples in the previous administration of shutting people down. We don't need to do that." The guy in Germany says we don't have shared values anymore because they want free speech. Give me your thoughts on that.
My thoughts on J.D. Vance is, no, I wouldn't have picked that topic if I went over. I would have picked NATO and defense spending and kept it on that. But J.D. Vance is entirely correct that the Germans and that many members of the EU have limited free speech and they're doing it wrong, and we don't like it. And we did it too when we closed the country down in 2020, right? And I don't like it. That's why we had shows where I said, I just walked into Aceware and told them to stick it. I wasn't wearing. Remember, we had shows where I'm like, as a guy who wasn't elected and wasn't the governor of Colorado, I did things I could do and told people to stick it all the time, wherever I was, right?
I just find it okay.
But
I'm not against free speech, but when you have free speech, it makes me cry.
no, but that guy's a complete clown. He summarizes Germany destroying themselves. That guy doesn't understand anything about freedom, that Germany is losing by letting too many illegal aliens themselves who are violent. The Afghan guy who just took down 29 people in Germany goes on over and over again. The rapes that happened in Sweden, the Islamic people who came in who never should have been allowed to come in, have destroyed these countries. I told you my trip to London. I can't go back anymore. I went and I didn't spend any time in London. I went out to Cambridge. London's taken over. There were 300,000 pro-Palestinian marching while I was there. There were people being arrested for protesting the protest, even though they shouldn't have been arrested. They were. So this guy shows up. I'm glad you played the tape. Everything that's wrong in Europe, and this is why Trump is right about them getting their act together on defending themselves, right? Germany doesn't have to talk about Hitler anymore and feel, oh my gosh, Japan needs a national defense. This is a long time ago. It's 3 generations ago. But for that guy to get up there and cry means that symbolizes everything that's going wrong in Germany, which was an industrial power, which is now Volkswagen's closing plants and saying to China, why don't you operate these plants? Lease them from us because our unions are so strong, we can't make any money making cars. Wow. That's how bad it is in Germany, Jimmy. They stink. Like, why can't they get their act together? They're actually very smart, well-educated. They got to kick people out of the country who have destroyed their country and get back to having children and get some coal plants operating again. Reignite their nuclear plants that they've closed. Yeah. Germany is the epicenter of stupidity.
All the things you're talking about are things they should be doing. But I played this yesterday, and my listeners can go back and watch it. A 60-minute clip on Sunday that it's actually illegal to insult someone.
Yeah.
Insults. I mean, so again, this is the problem. They start focusing on diversity, equity, inclusion. Don't offend anybody, and the rest of the country's going to hell in a handbasket. And hopefully, they figure it out soon. Because and then CBS this week saying, isn't free speech dangerous because free speech caused a genocide in Germany? And like, even in America, we have no clue about history.
It was the lack of free speech in Germany when people shut their mouth. This is the thing about CBS, and that's why these legacy people, they have, I think J.D. Vance is actually, they have to kind of go away. Like we shouldn't even use them as sources. Once in a while I take a photo or something and send it to you or somebody, but NBC, ABC, CB, they're not sources anymore.
I joked and said, I don't think Fox would operate half a day. They could work about 12 hours a day if they weren't playing clips from The View and CBS and NBC.
Yeah, they're not news sources. They're not. You're a news source. I actually am a news source. Like, I have data. I have statistics. I'm a news source. I go on some other national channels, and I'm a news source. CBS isn't. They're just playing They have videos where they're cutting out Trump on clips and do it on purpose. But back to the haphazard nation of allowing the JFK library to close and then reopen, again, is haphazard. It's not helpful.
I'm not aware of the backstory. What happened with this?
Because they fired so many people last week, the JFK library didn't have any people, I guess. They closed, and now they're reopening. But so for Trump to listen to this, it's not the conservatives who maybe don't want to go to the JFK library, although JFK was a very conservative guy, pro-life, right? War hero, real war hero, right? Cut taxes, et cetera, et cetera. That's not even the purpose. The purpose is there's too many things going back and forth. And this, for people listening, someone find Trump, this hurts him in the long run. It kind of hurts him in the short run, because then people say, well, does he really know what he's doing? And it plays into this thing that he's old. Now, I don't think he's lost a step. Maybe everybody's lost a step by 89 or 79, but it's going to play into this thing over the next 6 months. So to make the closure and reopening of JFK as important as like doing something about the IRS, which again is haphazard. It'd be better to propose a law to get rid of the IRS and have a flat tax and a fair tax or something, right? And get that passed so we can collect a lot more revenue and not deal with these stupid people at the IRS and then close the buildings. But they're not doing that. They're just doing stuff that's not working right now.
Do you have a favorite? Have you been to any presidential libraries, and which one did you enjoy and or not enjoy?
I loved it. I've been to JFK Library on Rhode Island 20 times, so maybe that's my favorite because I've been to. But if you get a chance to go to the Truman Library in Kansas, Missouri, you know what?
Independence, Missouri.
Yes, I'm sorry, in Missouri. It's right. I went to the Kansas City Royals game and I went there. So when you go there, it's an old-fashioned kind of thing. But you read where Truman, and you see where Truman had an office and how he entertained Japanese visitors, and you see the clips that are they're far long ago. But like for this one clip where the railroad union is going to strike. And there's a clip where Truman says, well, I guess we could put the railroad people into the military and then we wouldn't have and then the next clip is like, I guess we're not having a strike. So Truman's library, and you learn about how people loved Truman after he left office. They were taking apart his house piece by piece. Me and you, people like me and you, we'd go up and take a piece of his home. So they had to put a fence up. That's really still my favorite that I've been to, I think. Mostly because Truman, I learned much more about him with these clips than I did. Probably because I didn't know as much. I know a lot about JFK from growing up in Rhode Island and being a Roman Catholic growing up. You know a lot about JFK. But I've been to many of them. The saddest one is Jimmy Carter. Because he stunk. Yeah. And the most amazing thing about about the library is that everybody there is still sad. Because they don't have a lot of great things to say. Yeah. But Jimmy Carter as a governor was great. Jimmy Carter, the war guy, was great. Jimmy Carter TV ads were great. Workfare. Everybody had to work. But it's a sad library that I wouldn't go to again.
You probably heard me talk about it. I'll let you go here. The Obama, he was so worried about DEI and things that being sued. There are millions of dollars over budget. He's the longest in history, modern history. It's been over almost 3,000 days since he left office. It's still a year or so away. May never open. Yeah. Never done a liberal run a building program.
Right, and that sums it up, doesn't it? Obama running his own presidential library means it may never open because he sucks so bad at running things. It took Biden to say there was someone worse because Biden was his vice president. They can't run anything. They just it's beyond really belief that and that's Obama, right? He's just a selfish person himself. And doesn't care about black people, in my opinion, doesn't care about the country. His wife clearly never cared about the country. Remember the quotes that should have been disqualifying. But again, we live in a time where nothing's disqualifying, unfortunately.
Steve Laffey, always a pleasure, sir. SteveLaffey.com. SteveLaffey.com.
And I got to get to Reagan's. Anyway, I haven't been to that one.
Reagan's
I know. I love Reagan. Anyway, God.
They change the displays. I appreciate you, Steve. Steve Laffey.
God bless.
SteveLaffey.com. They change up the displays here all the time. So when I went there, my son got fascinated.
Yeah, I got to get to the Reagan Library.